No, not now. Shoot. I'm so excited, persisters and brothers, to bring to you today Lynne Parmiter Bowman. Lynne is the author of Brownies for Breakfast, a cookbook for diabetics and the people who love them. But Lynne is so much more. And she and I have been having so much fun in our pre-conversation that I just about forgot to hit the record button. Lynne has worked as an actress, a makeup artist, a journalist, and a television weather person. She's written books with the actress Deirdre Hall, and she's just had many amazing accomplishments and experiences. So Lynne, thank you so much for being here on Persistence U today. I really appreciate it.
I am so happy to be here. And I love this whole idea, Lizbeth, because I've spent a lot of time with my butt in the dirt, if you know what I mean. I've been bucked off. I've been to a lot of rodeos, as they say. And I just kept on keeping on, you know, which is how you end up with a resume that looks like a jigsaw puzzle.
Love your resume.
Well, as I told you when we were talking before, part of it was because I grew up in LA. I was born in Hollywood, California, of all the crazy places to be born. So right smack in the middle of this industry, and LA is very much a company town. So that was what my friends were doing, and that was what we were doing for work. And I will not say that I did any of it particularly well. Because, you know, we would try stuff. And I've come, the older I get, the more I embrace this, that failure is our best friend. You know, the more you are willing to just try it and see if it works, and try it again and try a different version of it. And you know, I think one of the complaints that people have about the generation of kids that's coming out of school now and going into college now is that the whole helicopter parent idea has put failure in the wrong category, you know, in the bad category.
Right.
When in fact, failure is the only way we really learn. You know, when you watch toddlers trying to navigate, they learn by falling over and by bumping their head and by getting their finger squished and so on. And they cry. And the wise parent goes, "Oh, sorry, honey," you know, and that's how we learn. And it continues on and on and on. And we hopefully never stop learning. And as you know, I'm older than dirt now. So I think that I'm here representing grandmas and grandpas as people who, you know, the more you embrace continuing to learn, and yeah, we know stuff because we're old, but the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Right.
And the more you can stay open to knowing new stuff all the time and not knowing stuff, the happier you are, I think.
I think that's so fantastic. And I like that you have embraced that whole career pivot, because you're right. I mean, you grew up in California and Hollywood. You're the first person I know born there. But I worked at Taco Bell as a teen. It makes sense that if you grew up in Hollywood, you'd work in film, and then it led to something else.
Yeah.
Then it led to something else. And I think a lot of times we pressure people, young people especially, lock into one thing, stay there miserably for the next 30 to 40 years. Then you can let go and maybe have a little time on the backside to see what's left and enjoy doing the things you like. And it looks like you've allowed yourself to just evolve and enjoy the ride.
But Lizbeth, I can't take credit for being my idea. The difference is I graduated from high school in 1964.
Okay.
So what were my prospects? What was I told to expect? We didn't have a plan, we women. Right. There was no plan. It was, you were going to marry somebody and you're going to have some kids and you were going to have a house. And frankly, I'd been brought up thinking that way. And yes, you want to be educated. You need to go to university, which I did. I went to UCLA so that you have a broad education. And hopefully you'll have a lovely home and you'll have some well-behaved kids. And, you'll have a husband who makes a ton of money and so on, doesn't have too many affairs or publicly.
Right.
And that was the world that I was being raised to enter. And that was my expectation. But things happen, right?
Right.
And I mean, I also like to point out to the young ones now that in 1964, I didn't have the option of going to Harvard because Harvard wasn't co-ed. I couldn't go to Harvard.
Right.
And there were a lot of other top schools that were not available to me, and law schools and all these things. So, and I also have friends, by the way, more or less my age, who struggled to get into this world and perhaps got law degrees and got their first job as an attorney, and who lasted about 3 weeks and went, I hate this,
Right.
right? I don't want to live my life like this. So to their credit, and teachers, I have more than one girlfriend who, because their parents said, well, get your teaching degree as a back, it's a good thing. And they spent their first few weeks in the classroom and ran screaming, I can't do this. This is not a thing I can do. So I come from a generation of women who did what they had to do
Right.
to survive, but not many of us went out there going, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Right.
That really wasn't our mentality. And maybe there's someone who would argue with me about that, but
I like that. I can really appreciate that too, because even I went to college just a teeny bit later. Even when I went to college, the first time before I failed out, there were women talking about getting their MRS degree, their Mrs. degree. That's what they went to college for, was to fulfill what their life's purpose was to get married and have children. Boom, that's it. And so for you, and we talked a little bit about this before, but you, not unlike me, you ended up in a marriage that wasn't safe to stay in. And so you needed to land on your feet, which you did, which I loved hearing that you eventually you did. Yes, you did acting, you did journalism, you did things. When did you feel like, when you have 3 little kids and a marriage that you could not safely stay in, when did you start feeling like, wait a minute, I think I can do this. I think I've got some skills that I can support my family.
This may sound odd, but I never doubted my own ability to work. I knew I could work. I'd been working since I was 12 or 13. I always worked.
Right.
And it was babysitting, it was cleaning houses, it was doing age appropriate things. And I nannied. And then I began to, I was always a good writer. I wasn't a trained writer, but I had the ability to work in those kinds of things. And
Wonderful.
then not a lot of other people were. I mean, if I was not great, they were lousy, right? So
I love it.
It was like swinging a tool belt,
Right.
It was just like, I can do that. Okay. And it never occurred to me that I would need a degree to do these things.
Okay.
And today the comparison, I talk to so many young people who just assume that without a degree, they're nothing. Well, no, I beg to differ. Skills are skills.
Right.
And if you know how to behave in a business environment and how to do a resume and how to offer service skills that are needed somewhere, somebody always will take you up on that. And it doesn't hurt to present yourself well. So, and
Right.
my dad actually, let me give him some credit here for, we grew up, of course, eating dinner around the table, which is a thing that I like to talk about, as you know, because I think where culture begins. I mean, and so many of us are driving through and eating out of a bag and, taking kids to practice and ball games and all these things. And we're not having dinner or a meal at all around the table. But I grew up sitting at a table with my dad and my mom and my older brother and sister. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but my dad, who was a marketing executive, he would hold forth every night, of course, because he was king of the table. And so I was getting an MBA marketing class every night at dinner.
Wow.
I was absorbing everything that he said about how he dealt with his sales team and how he dealt with manufacturing and distribution and what all the little things that you don't think of at the time as being an education. But then when you go out in the world, you realize that it's all in there. It's part of you. Maybe it's a grandparent that you're listening to. Maybe it's the guy who trains the horses that you ride. There's someone in your life who is giving you wisdom all the time of some kind, whether you know it or not. And in my case, it was marketing, industrial marketing. So I could talk that trash, when I went out and was looking for jobs, I knew that language. And I also enjoyed it. There was something about it that appealed to me. So that kind of guided me along a path. But what I thought I wanted to do was illustration. I loved doing fashion illustration.
Okay.
And still do. It's fun. But nice young ladies didn't go to trade school. And so instead of going, I studied at Art Center School in Los Angeles when I was still in high school, but nice young ladies, that was a trade school. And so I needed to go to university, UCLA.
Okay.
So I did, and I found it incredibly boring. There were motorcycles to be ridden, there were things to do. There was a world out there, and I actually liked to work. And I thought, I want people to pay me to write stuff. I don't want to pay people to read the stuff I write,
Right.
in my 19-year-old wisdom or 20-year-old wisdom. So I took off for Paris.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But also, Lizbeth, my life was shaped, as so many lives are, by things that happened. And my mother died when I was 18. So immediately, I was not living the life of most American 18-year-old women because I had no mom and I had no home anymore.
Right. Oh, wow.
My mom had been had a chronic disease, and so the money was gone, the house was gone, my dog was gone, my dad sort of started a new life, my brother and sister were gone. So at the age of 18, I was emancipated in this kind of rough way, but my ass was on the line. I mean, I was alone in the world in most ways, which, in one way you go, wow, that's rough. But I was free. I was free. And this conversation to me is so interesting with young women now and their moms. So many women live a life where they are controlled by a mother, a grandmother, a husband, a boyfriend.
Right.
And I had a taste of freedom when I was 18 years old. And I had enough skills and enough, I don't know, cheekiness or something that I was okay with it. I thought, no, I can do this. It's all right. And I enjoyed my freedom. And I was willing to take some lumps. And I think I had angels on my shoulders too, because I probably should have crashed and burned, more seriously than I did. But it was all fascinating to me, and I survived it, and I managed to get work and stuff that was left off that resume until I started getting real jobs. And I think RedKen Laboratories was my first real job.
Okay.
And many of you know that that's a hair product company,
Sure.
which I thought, cool. All right. Cosmetics, I can do that. And 3 weeks after being hired to be a production artist, I walked in on a Monday morning and everyone in the department but me had been fired.
Oh, scary.
Okay. And so what did I do? Of course, my dad, I marched into the president's office and said, I think we can do this if you'll let me just, hang in there for that, and we'll hire people, and we can just, and so she said, all right, all right. President of the company was a woman. I thought that was fantastic. And you know what? I did it. I went to the vendors who were working with the department, the guys that were doing the typesetting and all this stuff. And I said, teach me everything quick, the printers. And they did. And so I got this graduate course in print production and advertising production in weeks from these guys. And I hired a couple people, and so at the age of 21, I was the advertising manager of a large and up and coming cosmetic company.
Oh my goodness.
But, this is how the world operates, right?
Right.
And I've always tried to teach the people who I mentor, or, in the classes that I've taught, say yes, just say, yeah, okay. And then figure it out, because you can.
Right. I love it. It's been such an interesting career. You've been reinvented so many different times. Now you're in your 70s and you could well retire. So what inspires you to keep going and doing these new things like this incredible cookbook?
Okay, well, and the real answer to that, Lizbeth, is vanity. I'm not going to admit that I'm finished, right? Until I'm finished,
Right.
keep punching. The book was a labor of love, because my kids kept saying to me, Ma, you need to tell people, how you cook. You need to write this stuff down. And I go, nah, because no, you need to write this stuff down. Because I was diabetic. There's Vigo, come picture. I was diagnosed as diabetic when I was in my 40s. And
Okay.
so over the decades, I learned how to control it with food and exercise. And the medical community was no help. I mean, it just wasn't, because back in the day, the dawn of time when I was in my 40s, the medical community did not heal with food. They didn't want to talk about food. It's like, yeah, lose some weight and, don't eat too many carbs and stuff. But everyone by now understands that most MDs get practically no training in nutrition. And at the same time, we're figuring out that a huge number of these chronic diseases are diseases of food, strictly related to what people are eating and how they're moving. And of course, diabetes is right up there on the list.
Right.
So I was a self-taught diabetes expert who had reversed my own diabetes. And I want everybody to know how to do that. It's not complicated, it's easy, and it involves eating brownies and donuts. Hello? Wouldn't you want to share that with the world? It's like, and I got this little book right here.
Yeah. Tell us the title again, because the subtitle is particularly interesting to me.
Okay. It's Brownies for Breakfast, a cookbook for diabetics and the people who love them.
Yes.
Which is important because that means everybody in the world, by the way. And it also means that it's very hard to be a diabetic alone in a family, for example, or in an office where people go, well, why don't you want these donuts? Well, because they'll kill me.
Right.
Oh, you need support. You're going to be most successful if you have your friends and family supporting you. But here's the secret is that by eating the way a diabetic should eat, everybody would be way healthier.
Right.
And live longer and be happier and sleep better and have better sex. Everything, if they would just do things the way diabetics are supposed to do, because it's all the same. It's eating whole food, plant-based food, real food.
Mm-hmm.
That's really it. And Michael Pollan is famous for saying not too much, but if you eat real food, you have a hard time eating too much because you get full.
Right.
which is totally different from eating Doritos or something, which is an engineered food that is engineered to keep you eating.
And hungry. And even restaurant food is, I
Yeah.
once had a kid tell me who worked at McDonald's that they spritzed the salads with a little bit of sugar water because it keeps you hungry and you're going to order more. So even trying to make quote unquote healthy choices at restaurants is pretty much impossible. We don't control what goes in the food.
Yeah. We have a whole country, and we're spreading this throughout the world, that is addicted to sugar. And I don't use the word addicted, carelessly. It is truly an addiction, just like heroin is an addiction. In fact, there's science behind the idea that sugar is more addictive than heroin. And so my answer to that is, if I told you that I was addicted to heroin, would you say to me, well, you ought to cut back, honey?
Yeah.
No,
You'd say, stop using it.
stop,
Right.
stop now. You're going to kill
Right.
yourself. So, yeah. And I opened the book to this page, Lizbeth, because I loved doing this. I don't know if you can see it particularly
It's
well, but
very
these are
lovely donut pictures. Yes.
made with my recipe, and this is what's in my recipe. This is what is in a certain popular chain of drive-through donut
Right.
recipes, that, which you can't see because it's in small type. And even if you could see it, you couldn't pronounce any of it.
I heard one person, because I think the term whole foods, it's hard for people to understand what that is because most of us haven't grown up with them anymore. So I heard one person say recently, look at it this way. If it's been advertised on TV, don't eat it.
Yeah.
It's just a food. It's just the food as it was meant to be. It has no label with a whole bunch of ingredients necessarily. So I was like, oh, that's a very simple description of what we could be doing.
Yeah, it's really not complicated at all. But if, and I'm that awful friend who may have come over to your house and opened your cupboards up and gone, do you realize you have nothing in here except sugar and processed flour?
Popular, I'm sure, at Thanksgiving
Yeah,
and
yeah,
holidays.
that's me.
But I think that's fantastic that you're doing it. Does it give you, like, what's been the response from people in your family and in the community who's bought your book?
Well, I'm suddenly thinking of all these stories. Family is different.
Right.
Because family, there are certain things we can't say to family members and certain things they can't say to us. And my husband is very supportive, particularly Elizabeth. And let me tell you a little story. In 2019, I went to the Plantricians Conference, and I had the book about half done. And this is a group of MDs from all over the world who believe in the science of healing with food, and some big names that you might have heard, T. Colin Campbell and Dean Ornish. And I wanted to go. It was in Oakland. And I thought, and I had the book. I had a little promo piece on the book done. And I thought, I'm going to show them and see if they would be interested in using this in their practice. So I went to this conference, and for 5 days, I watched PowerPoints from 8 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night.
Yikes.
And saw the data around plant-based eating.
Oh, okay.
And it's pretty frightening that and so I absorbed, and by frightening, I don't mean that plant-based is frightening. I mean that eating meat is not good for your health, basically. And I had always been a meat eater because diabetics were always told to eat protein and no carbs or few carbs and so on. So my husband picked me up to take me home from this thing, and I got in the car and I said, okay, guess what? And of course, no man ever wants to hear that from their girlfriend, their wife. But he said, what? And I said, I'm a vegan now. And there was kind of a silence. And then he said, okay, I'm in. So we, for 6 months, we did an experiment on ourselves and did not eat one bite of animal food, nothing, for 6 months. And I had just had my test, my blood work done. So then I went in and got retested my blood work. And I had been a relatively well-controlled diabetic. But after 6 months with no animal food, my numbers came down dramatically. So I went from being a well-controlled diabetic to being, oh, you're not really diabetic anymore. You're not.
Wow.
Yeah. And so now at this point, I do eat eggs, and I talk about them in the book. I eat, let's say, beef that is plant fed, that is raised right here on local pastures and not
Okay.
fed corn and, healthy, well raised beef. I will eat once in a while, not often, but that is not the way the world is going that direction, but they're
Right.
not there yet. And there's information coming out all the time that there's so much science behind the value of eating food that's whole, that comes out of good dirt and is not polluting, which is another thing. When you eat healthy yourself, when you eat well, you're also doing good things for the community and for the earth. It's not, we're all part of this system, that makes us not separate in our need for Oreos, right?
Right.
There's the packaging that's involved, there's the chemicals that are involved, there are the people that do the work, and so when you get down to, I want to eat ethically, let's just say that I want to eat ethically. Well, guess what? Okay, great, I agree with you, but it's not something that many people are ready to embrace yet, because it means doing things differently.
Radically differently than the average American diet, especially, I would say. But what are some, because I hate for people to think that they have to go from American diet to vegan, but what are some baby steps that people could take that could show some results and move the needle bit by bit?
Well, and I don't even think of them as baby steps, Elizabeth, because any one of these things can be major if it's your habit. Here's one small example. Everybody stops at Starbucks or Pete's for their coffee in the morning, and it's a part of your life and you love it. And then when pumpkin pie spice comes out, you want it. Well, one of the first things I would want anybody to do is cut that out right now. And if you go for coffee, it needs to be black coffee. Nothing in it. No sugar, no pumps of anything, no milk-like substance of, and I'm not opposed to oat milk or anything like that.
Sure.
But taste what real good black coffee tastes like, and you may find you like it. I've loved it for a long time, and I drink a ton of coffee, black, nothing in it. So that's a number one thing. And if you can, just experiment with no sugar.
Okay.
Because it's such an eye opener to see that anything in a bag or a box, whether it's a cereal or a meat product or pasta or whatever, it's got sugar in it. You're eating sugar day and night. So those are two quick things.
Okay.
Another thing that and we don't have time today, maybe we can do this again,
Right.
but the whole idea of time restricted eating, the word restricted bothers people, but people need to learn to not eat all the time.
Right. Eat in a window. Eat in
Yeah.
like if here's how I've heard about it is pretend your house is a restaurant and there's an open time, when the restaurant opens, and there's a shut time, and don't work around the clock.
And the more you know about physiology and biology, the more you understand things like, here's one of my favorite new vocabulary words. I love it. Autophagy. It's this process that takes place in your cells after not eating for a certain amount of time. And there's a lot of new science coming out, new research coming out about, well, how long are we talking about? Well, what do we mean? Well, what does autophagy look like? And I think of it as the road crew that comes out after all the traffic is gone, you know, on the freeway. Then the guys come out with the shovels and the brooms and the stuff, and they clean and they repair. But they can't do it while the traffic is whizzing down the road. Our bodies are absolutely the same way. They are designed to clean themselves and repair all these cells to repair themselves, but they can't do it while you're digesting food, while you're eating and digesting food. So you need to leave something like 12 hours, maybe more. And I've heard 16 hours, 18 hours between your last meal of the day and your next meal of the next day. And when you add that up, you go, well, I could do that. That's right. You could do that. And I've also heard lots of science about, well, do you mean skip breakfast or do you mean skip dinner? And the answer to that is, yeah. What works for you?
Right.
In my case, I eat at 8 or 9 in the morning and I eat at 2, 3 in the afternoon, and that's my last meal. I don't eat at night. And if you want to do one thing that improves your health, will get rid of your GERD, you know, your acid reflux, you'll lose some weight, you'll feel more energetic. If you're having digestive problems of any kind, they're likely to clear up. Stop eating at night. That's
More
pretty simple.
difficult than it sounds for people in that habit, but I love I love that you're talking about this, because we can work toward this. We can work toward this. Of course, I would always say for any person out there is like, you want to go to your doctor, you want to make sure that you don't have certain medical things. This is not medical advice, but fact of the matter is food should be therapeutic, can be medicine for our bodies. And the way that we eat it has everything to do with how we feel.
Everything.
And I used to work in a government office where we had a few people struggling with migraines, who I kindly pointed out that sometimes when you go to the vending machine and you eat what's in there, it seems like right after that, you have to go home. Could there be a relationship? And I know people get very upset by that, but the fact of the matter is there are so many things like amazing cream in our coffee that I love so much, but that can really affect us differently. And the older we get, the more it impacts us. And I really had to reconcile that as I've gotten older and had to renovate my own diet and
Another
continue
way
to.
Look at it, Lizbeth, is that by eating the way most Americans do, the standard American diet, the SAD diet, you're eating beige all the time, brown, you know, when you push that off your plate, what does it open up the door for? Color, flavor, spices, taste. You will find it's like, how did I live without arugula? How did I live without ahi sauce? How did I live without these beautiful foods that are now my favorite things? And I was too busy eating really bad burgers.
Right. Right.
So it isn't a matter of deprivation. I don't think of it that way at all. And when I eat my meals, I eat what I want. I eat as much as I want. I eat lustily and happily and well, but I don't eat crap.
Right.
I eat good food, and I make most of it. So I know what goes into it. And right there you go, yeah, well, she cooks, you know, well, yeah, I'm a lady and I'm a messy cook. And that's why I wrote my book, because it doesn't need to be hard. It can be really, really simple. And my superpower, if I have one, was putting a meal on the table in 15 minutes. And my friends all know that they can arrive at my door and 10 minutes later, there's something on the table for them. I mean, it's if you know how to do it, and my book will tell you how, you can easily put good, beautiful food on the table in no time at all, because I'll tell you what to have in your freezer and what to have in your pantry. And my darling friends, you're going to save money. We're all talking now about how much food costs and how food costs up and so on. And when the poop first hit the fan and everybody was talking about empty shelves and so on, You know, I was out there in the produce department. I was alone and I had all this food. It was not a problem, and it's still not a problem.
The Pop-Tarts were gone, the chips were gone, toilet paper
But
was gone, but lots of vegetables left behind.
there was a ton. And you know, it's really, it's not rocket science, you know.
Right.
I can pay $2 for a giant bunch of dark greens. And if you could see how nutritious those are and taste how fabulous they are, you'd go, wait, $2 for that? Yeah, $2
That's
for that.
wonderful. That's wonderful.
And when was the last time you drove through and got a meal? You know, that's $15 now.
Right. 20. Actually, yesterday I did spend $20
Okay.
on, I hadn't eaten out in a long, long time. And I went out and
I
had
got
lunch.
you, didn't I?
$20. Yes. And it was meat. Don't get me wrong. It was meat. I'm not gonna lie, but absolutely groceries are going up. So this does matter. And the same thing with having a window of when you eat, you can save a lot of money even by just at least a few days a week, even thinking about shutting your eating window down or eating within a range that makes sense. Even a few
And
days a week can help as you climb. And we probably should wrap up soon, but I definitely want to
shoot.
hear where people can get a hold of you and your work. I just love what you've done. That picture of the donut was so beautiful that you made. And I know that, you know, this is a labor of love for you, but it's also a labor of love for everyone who's been ill or who doesn't want their loved one to be so anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really simple as this. I have a website. It's lynnebowman.com, LYNNEBOWMAN. And everything is there. The book's listed. The book is on Amazon. You can go to your independent bookseller, and I hope you will, and ask them for it. And when they go,
Love
gosh, I'm not carrying that. Well, it's fantastic. You need to carry this book. They can get it from their wholesaler and order it for you. But you can get it today on Amazon, and I hope you'll get one, and give me a review on Amazon, because that helps other people also to know what really goes on with the book. And if you go to my website, you can sign up right on the first page on Lynne's list, and I will send you free the Mimi's Badass Brownie recipe, which is the recipe of brownies for breakfast, and also a few other things. I don't send a lot of stuff out because I'm lazy, but I send some other recipes out, and I will send you a piece about sweeteners that are the really good sugar replacements, because I've already told you that I want you to quit sugar. So in order to do that, you need to know what the best sugar replacements are now. And I have an article on that I've written that I'm happy to send you.
Love
so
it.
Lynne.com, just remember to put LYNNE.
That's important.
That's important. And I hope you will. And you can also send me questions. There's a contact form on the website. So if you have questions about diabetic relatives or kids or yourself, or just eating healthy, whatever, I love hearing from people. And I want you to know that I have shot all the pictures in the book, almost all of them, myself. The reason being, your food will turn out the way it does in the pictures. It wasn't shot by a team of people making it all look glamorous and so on. I took the pictures on my iPhone. So it's a what you see is what you're gonna get kind of deal when you use these recipes. They are so easy.
Good. I love that you did it. And thank you so much for sharing today, Lynne. Fantastic. Thanks for being here. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week.
I plan to. Thank you, Lizbeth. You too.
Hold on one little second. I always have to figure out how to stop. Whoop. Lynne?
I'm still here.
Okay. Stop recording. Ah, there we are.